to talk about sleep and consciousness. So, sleep is a temporary reversal of consciousness, and it was previously believed that when you slept, your brain completely shut down. We now know that that's not entirely correct. There is some processing that goes on, and if something is urgent enough, you will wake up in time for it. I heard that y'all had a 5 a.m. fire drill, for example. Odds are pretty good you were able to reverse that period of unconsciousness and wake up and get out of your residence halls for that. Sleep is literally built into our lives. It is a biological necessity. And it turns out that part of the reason that it's built into our lives is through circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are biological cycles in regular and daily patterns. During the time that you sleep, your body temperature drops, certain hormones circulate, you do a lot of growth while you sleep. There are a lot of hormones that are at work while you sleep. Um, some of the garbage in your brain, like buildup and things like that, are cleared out while you sleep. It's part of the reason why people say getting a good night's sleep is important, especially if you're trying to avoid things like Alzheimer's disease, because while you sleep, your brain is getting rid of waste. So, sleep wake cycles work very interestingly in the brain. They are affected by light. So there have been some times where I haven't gotten a great night's sleep, but as soon as I wake up in the morning, and I'm up in the morning and I see the sunlight, I get a little bit of my second wind back. And that's because our sleep wake cycles are affected by that. We have a part in our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is right here, that responds to light by modifying changes in our sleep wake cycle. When it becomes darker, the suprachiasmatic nucleus will send a message to our pineal gland back here to release more melatonin. Melatonin helps us sleep, and it tends to be released more in the dark and less when it's light. Now, you've probably been told that you need about 7 to 8 hours to function. Everybody is going to be different with the amount of sleep that they need. As I have gotten older, I have found that I need at least 7 hours or my energy is going to be dropping throughout the day. For some of you, you may need more than that. For some of you, you might need less. We're all very different in that respect. One of the things that we know is that your consciousness levels change throughout sleep. And when you sleep through the night, you go back and forth between these different stages. So typically when we're awake, we engage in beta waves. They're very high frequency, which means that they cycle back and forth very quick. Usually when we're very relaxed or even tired, we start to see alpha waves. You also tend to see these when you meditate. When you go into stage one sleep, we start to see what are known as theta waves. This is very light level sleep. A couple of hallmarks that we occasionally see in this stage are something known as a myoclonic or a hypnic jerk. So if you've ever had the case where you've fallen asleep and then your leg jerks you back awake, that is a case of a hypnic jerk. In this particular case, your body was getting ready to shut down for sleep, and in that process, your muscles spasmed and woke you up. In stage two, we start to see these little bursts of activity known as sleep spindles. So we're only in about stage one sleep for about 15 to 20 minutes before going into stage two. We have these sleep spindles, which are characteristic of this stage. Stages 3 and 4 are slow wave, very deep sleep. At this point, it is harder to wake somebody up in these stages. If you do wake up somebody in this stage, they are going to take some time to actually wake up. They're going to be really groggy. And then something interesting happens. So you go from stage one to stage two to stage 3 and 4. And all of this happens in about a period of 45 minutes or so. And then you start cycling back up. You go 4, you go 3, you go 2, but you don't go back to 1. In this case, you enter a new stage of sleep that is known as REM sleep. REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement. We know this because when you're in this stage, your eyes are rapidly fluttering underneath your eyelids. Now, if you look at the brain activity for REM sleep, it kind of looks pretty similar to what you'd see for somebody who's awake. So, what's interesting is that this is sometimes referred to as paradoxical sleep. Your brain is really active during this time, but because of some of the processes shutting down in your brain, your muscles do not move. You are effectively paralyzed. Your muscles will not move at this particular stage. So, sometimes if you've woken up from a dream, you may not be able to move right away because of that temporary paralysis. This is also a stage where dreaming occurs. Many people report that they do not dream, but if you tend to wake somebody up during the REM stage, they will report having dreamt just before you woke them up. So we cycle throughout the night. So we're awake, we go into one, we go into two. By the end of the first hour, we're already in stage four. Then we go three, two, we go into REM, which is right here, and we do this over and over again. So, one of the things that's interesting is that the longer that we sleep, the less time we spend in stage four deep sleep, and the more time we spend in REM sleep. So, stage four sleep decreases throughout the night, REM increases throughout the night. And while we sleep, we dream. This is usually during REM, but our most bizarre dreams tend to happen in REM sleep. If we are dreaming during non REM sleep, it's going to be less bizarre. Now, you might wonder, do our dreams actually mean anything? Somebody like Sigmund Freud would say yes. He would say that dreams are an opportunity to act out wishes that you would not otherwise get to do. And he also made a distinction between what he referred to as manifest content, the actual content of the dream. So I can dream about going to a city and looking at skyscrapers. And then there's the latent content, what Freud believed that the dream actually symbolized. So if I'm dreaming about going and seeing skyscrapers, somebody like Freud is going to say that I'm really just looking at a bunch of phallic symbols. More recently, we tend to ascribe to what is called the activation synthesis theory. So when we sleep, our brain fires in random patterns, patterns that we're not always able to control. And so that's what the activation part of the activation synthesis theory means. That's why our dreams often have really bizarre content, but our brain tries its best with the resources that we have to make a story out of it. And that's what the synthesis is. So it's basically our brain doing its best to make a coherent narrative out of the random firing patterns that happen while we dream. Sleep is an adaptive behavior, and there are a lot of different benefits. So, some people believe that sleep happens because it gives our body an opportunity to rest and repair itself. Repair itself. Other people believe that evolutionarily speaking, sleeping during the night when other animals, especially predator animals, could be stalking prey, gave us protection from harm. And then additionally, we do also believe in the consolidation theory. While you sleep, many of the memories that you have formed throughout the day and different brain circuits and networks are strengthening themselves into a more permanent form. And sleep can actually really help with that. Generally, sleep deprivation is harmful. I know that I don't need to tell you that. Generally, a few days of sleep deprivation isn't going to hurt you much. Your ability on strength and athletic ability and complex tasks will be largely okay. But for quiet tasks or for everyday tasks that don't require a lot of attention, it can actually hurt you more. Longer periods of deprivation are harmful. We know that people engage in lapses of attention, it's harder to focus, short term memory is poor, and eventually you will start engaging in what are called micro sleeps. These short little periods where your brain goes into sleep mode while you're still awake. We do also know that if you are deprived of REM sleep, you will enter it much more easily the next and much more quickly the next time you sleep. And this is what is known as REM rebound. Generally, accidents are a lot more likely with sleep deprivation. I'm not overly fond of the different y axes here, but what I want you to focus on is generally we have daylight saving time. In the spring, usually in March, we lose an hour so we can have daylight earlier. And in the fall, we gain an hour so the sun starts going down at 5, which Dr. Gilchrist hates. But what you'll notice, here's the Monday before the time change, here's the Monday after the time change. When we lose an hour, the number of accidents spikes after the time change. When we gain an hour, you can see the number of accidents somewhat drops. So it does make these things a little bit more likely. In your textbook, be sure to read about the different sleep disorders like insomnia, narcolepsy, and sleep apnea. We'll also talk about the best ways to get a good night's sleep in the book. When I get back, we will start to talk about child development. I'll see you on Wednesday.